welcome to Dining for Women's Google Hangout. Today we have several guests on our program. We have the Peter C. Alderman Foundation, which will be the featured program for September. First, let me introduce you to Catherine, who is the Web Content Manager for Dining for Women. Hi, Catherine.
Hi.
Then we have Jada Tillis-Anderson, who is serving presently on the Program Selection Committee. I will be away on a sabbatical from October to December, and Jada will be hosting the Google Hangouts. Hi, Jada.
Hi, Veena. Thank you.
Let me introduce you to the Peter C. Alderman Foundation. First, we have Liz Alderman, who is the co-founder of the Peter C. Alderman Foundation. Hello, Liz.
Hello, Veena. Thank you for having us.
Oh, you're absolutely welcome. We also have Vitsa Toll, the program director for all of Peter C. Alderman Foundation's programs, and he joins us from Uganda. Hi, Vitsa.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, hello. Liz, Vitsa, why don't you take over and describe your program to all of us?
Okay, before I describe the program that you have so generously offered to fund, I just want to tell you why we started the Peter C. Alderman Foundation. Our youngest child, Peter, was murdered on September 11th at the World Trade Center in New York. He was attending a conference at Windows on the World. He did not work in the building, and he was 25 years old when he was killed. Our family knew that we wanted to leave a mark for Peter, a mark that he had existed on this earth and that the world would be a better place because he lived. We didn't have a clue what to do until I learned that there were over 1 billion people, 1/6 of the Earth's population, that had directly experienced torture, terrorism, mass violence, and 50 to 70% of those people, because of traumatic depression and PTSD, could no longer lead productive lives. And I thought that there would be no better memorial for Peter than to be able to return people to life. Peter loved life, and if we could do that in his name, it was the perfect thing to do. When we started, we had nothing but our passion to leave that mark. We had zero knowledge about the world of global mental health. I had been a special education teacher, and my husband was a physician. Why mental health? People often ask us that question because there are so many pressing problems in the world. HIV/AIDS, potable water, people being able to work. And you aren't able to do any of those things when you don't care whether you will live or die. We have seen this with our own eyes. In Uganda, people take their bed nets and sell them to people who are making wedding gowns, or to fishermen. It helps them catch more fish. People won't walk that extra mile for potable water. They'll drink the filthy water that's running by their huts. And again, we've seen this with our own eyes. And so we are trying to take people out of this despair and return them to some sort of hope. In order to do this, we have to partner with government. We do it so that there is no money involved. The government gives us space in their clinics. They give us our psychotropic drugs, inpatient beds if we need it, and some of our consumable supplies. It's the only way to scale something up to the entire country if the government is a participant in the work. Another key factor is that our work must be culturally appropriate. There are no Western faces in our clinic. When you're dealing with mental health, it must be people who understand the patient and the culture. So we only use local care, even down to the same tribe. We currently operate 7 trauma clinics. We are 2 in Cambodia. We have 4 in northern Uganda. We have 1 in Kenya. We've already done a needs assessment in Burundi, and we're waiting to see what happens with the political climate before we go in. Last year, we saw in Uganda, we returned 15,000 survivors to function. Our job is not to make our patients happy. That really may truly be beyond us, but it is to return them to function. When you function, when you can take care of yourself, when you can take care of your family, you begin to feel better about yourself. And also 70% of our patients are women. Uganda has been in terrible, terrible turmoil for years and years. For 20 years, the Lord's Resistance Army operated in the northern Uganda, killing over 70,000 people and kidnapping and using over 35,000 children as child soldiers, the men as fighters, the women as sex slaves. 1.8 million people have been in IDP camps, and there are high, high rates of sexual violence. And when we think about our soldiers serving time and in the military, and they have 1 deployment or 5 deployments, these people have been going through this for 20 years, and it truly, truly takes a toll. There is a tremendous need for the mothers of pregnant children to receive counseling. Pre- and postnatal depression affects 1 in 4 women in northern Uganda, creating an increased risk of obstetric complications such as preterm labor, low birth weight babies, and even suicide. The children need this. The children of depressed mothers suffer terrible, terrible consequences. They are premature birth, they have low birth weight, they have developmental delays, and 40% of all children born in Uganda have what the Ugandans call stunting, which is physical or emotional lack of growth. And so you're losing so many of these children before they're even 2 years old. The program follows depressed pregnant women from the 2nd trimester of pregnancy up until the child's 2nd year of life. The pilot, which is being done in Soroti, Uganda, is being funded by the Bloomberg School at Johns Hopkins University, and we're training community health workers to teach stress reduction and self-care, stress reduction through self-care and psychoeducation. We screen the for the risk. Are they depressed? If they are, they start with the community health worker. They move on to, if it's needed, to the clinics for counseling and group therapy, and also psychiatric care if it is required. Our plan is next fall to bring it to full scale in Soroti, and then hopefully within the next 6 months start to bring it to scale throughout all of our clinics. This program will help in so many ways. It will decrease the number of mothers suffering from depression and anxiety. It will improve well-being and functioning. Women will be able to take better care of themselves and their babies. They'll even be able to participate and go to work. There are larger outcomes, healthier babies, better nutrition for them, and communities that are sensitized to perinatal depression, which means earlier identification, more referrals, which help to decrease stigmatization. And because we partner with governments can start to screen their pregnant mothers for depression, and this helps scale it up to a much larger population. And eventually, this can be replicated all over Uganda and other low-income countries. We have great, great hopes for this program.
Thank you, Liz. I just wanted to say that we are deeply appreciative of the Peter C. Alderman Foundation sending us a proposal. We were all in the program selection committee deeply moved by our proposal. We love the focus that you have on maternal mental health and focusing on conflict zones, which is so very important. So let me go ahead and ask you a few questions about the details of the program. And probably, Vitsa, you could answer this. To begin with, when you are working with these mothers, do you see any cultural resistance in the mothers, or are they so focused on the well-being of their children that they are kind of willing to accept treatment?
Would you like me to answer that?
Yes, Vita, go ahead. Yes.
So we do a lot of hard work before we start programs to ask women first, what do you see as your main priorities, and how do you think we can help you address them? So it's our job really to find out first what kind of resources women have themselves. And one of the biggest resources that we keep hearing on and that we've already proven is actually effective for reducing depression is that women support each other. So we don't see a lot of resistance. We see that there is stigma on feeling bad. There's stigma on not having enough energy, because as a woman in Uganda, you have a lot of work in it on a day-to-day basis. But when we do find women and when we are able to talk with them about how they're feeling, then the kinds of treatment that we can offer is very much culturally appropriate.
Okay. Expanding on that idea, since the Dining for Women grant is focused more on young women, girls and women, can you address what the community is doing for women who may be outside of the reproductive age, and also the men and the young boys in the community who are also suffering?
Yeah, that's a good question. Unfortunately, women don't in Uganda have so much choice over their reproductive health. So most women spend a lot of their reproductive age pregnant or having delivered. The fertility for women in Uganda is more than 6. So most women have 6 or more children. So there aren't really too many women, unfortunately, who are not at some point in the reproductive cycle. But women who are older and younger do visit our regular clinics. This is an additional program that we are running to make sure that we can find this very important target group, because we feel that by reaching the mothers, we can reach the whole family.
Exactly. And what would you say is the role of the extended family? Because typically, large families, more support. What can you say about that?
Yeah, no, in sub-Saharan Africa, the extended family is life to many people. Unfortunately, 20 years of war have really sought at the fundament of the extended family. So where you would have families that were strongly together, working together, where there was harmony, you now see that there's often a lot of conflict within families, potentially over land, potentially over other resources, because the men are not able to work, because a lot of things have happened to the family. That resource is not as strong as it used to be.
Okay. So I suppose your program is doing so much to support these families, even when they are young families or whether they are in the middle of their family cycle. So that is so absolutely wonderful. So Liz, perhaps you can answer this next question. Can you elaborate for us some of the other programs that you are doing in other countries, in other conflict zones?
We, first of all, treat everybody who needs it. It's not just mothers. This is a particular program within our global mental health outreach to all who need it. We have specific programs for child soldiers. We work with, we have groups of people who are living with HIV/AIDS, etc. But we all suffer from stress, trauma, loss in our lives. This is part of being human. We are all caught up in this. There's not one of us who has not struggled with or had a loved one struggle with mental illness, depression, challenges coping after the loss of a loved one. Yet mental health remains stigmatized. We don't talk about it enough. We don't do enough about it. And the major foundations don't support it. I mean, we are really kind of out there alone blowing in the wind. There are very few foundations that deal with global mental health, especially in post-conflict regions where it is absolutely necessary in order to have the society begin to thrive again, to function. Mental health is actually key to economic recovery. If you can't function, you can't help your society grow. Once you can function, you can start to contribute to your society rather than taking the scant resources that are there. We all know that supporting women is the way to create a better world. a more peaceful world, more economically and politically just world. As women and mothers, we understand this. And in northern Uganda today, think of these women's future and their children's future. This program can and will change their lives and their communities for the better. There's no doubt about it. We are absolutely certain of it. And of course, since we measure and evaluate everything that we do, and we do many studies and have published in many journals, we are actually going to prove that what we will be doing because of you will work in these communities. So we thank you so much for your support, for your contribution, for allowing this to happen. I mean, you're really going to change part of the world by doing this. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz, so much. One last question for you. We know that you're scaling this program up, and the government is kind of taking over some aspects of it in sometime in the future. So, what is next for the Peter C. Alderman Foundation? Which part of the world? What will you do next?
Well, what we're thinking now, because we have been active in East Africa, we also run a conference, an East African conference where we've had as many as 800 people attend, healthcare workers from 22 countries. And so we've been working in East Africa for a while, and we think that probably the most efficient thing to do is to spread our program throughout other countries in East Africa. We already have the relationships. We've built the relationships with the governments, with the universities. Our conference is a moving conference. We don't want one country to just own that conference. So, I mean, ideally, as we are able to raise more funding, we want to go to other countries in East Africa. There are many, many people who need help there, and people ask us, why aren't we working in the United States? There is help available here. Sometimes it's hard to get to, sometimes it's difficult to navigate the system. Where we are providing help, no help existed before the Peter C. Alderman Foundation came into the country.
Yes. Well, Liz, Witsa, thank you so much for joining us today in this Google Hangout. The focus of your foundation on mental health, which is so very important in these very, very traumatized communities, is a wonderful partnership the Dining for Women is looking forward to. Perhaps the Dining for Women family can lend their collective voice to our political leaders to kind of pay attention to these kinds of things and maybe reduce conflict in these different communities. Well, let's hope for a better world. Thank you once again for joining us. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for having us.